G'day, friends and fans. Welcome. I'm the author, David Applegate, author of the book The Boyhood of Cade, book one of The Empire of Elves, and welcome to Future Fantasy Empire. A brief word. This channel is sponsored by people like you, the viewing audience. After the show, please check out the links in the description. Now, Twitter viewers, those will be in follow-up tweets. Today with me is Leyla Cardena, author of the book Becoming Insane. Yes, I made a mistake in this description. I better fix that. A mind-bending supernatural psychological crime thriller, and it is book one of Look Inside You series.
Yes.
Leyla, please introduce yourself.
Well, as David told you, my name is Leyla Cardena, and I'm an author. I'm half British, half Moroccan. That's why I speak English, and that's why I can write in English too. And I've lived in Geneva, Switzerland all my life. And well, I used to be a legal assistant in the corporate domain, and at 22 years old, no, 23, I believe, I decided to take a risk and just follow my passion, which is writing, and become an author.
Tell me more. What made you realize you wanted to write? Was there an inspiration?
Well, I always loved creating stories and characters since I was a child. That's why I would always be very spoiled with dolls. I really needed a lot of dolls because I used to create like several different characters, several different scenarios. And then at 9, 10 years old, I started to write a little bit with well, with the minute knowledge about writing that I had. And also, um, I used to read a lot before I was 10, 11 years old. And when I was 10 and 11 years old, I was just passionate about cinema and movies. And this is where I discovered a lot of book adaptations, like Streetcar Named Desire and the works of Tennessee Williams, which I adore. And if you really want to go into the other end of the spectrum with fantasy, there's Tolkien, of course, which is the world of Tolkien is a world to be studied. And I study it until today. I never stopped. And it's it was just incredible. To put it simply, um, I lived with my grandmother nearly all my life. She was British, and she had this amazing cardboard box with all those old VHS tapes where there would be all of those incredible movies, not just old movies from the 40s and 50s, which were book adaptations that had messages in them, social messages, but also, actual movies of today. And I just love, you know, watching those movies and putting one tape after another in, and discovering those stories, and then being able to compare the book to the movies, and then reading the books, which I do have the works of Tennessee Williams because I have a very nice library with
Yes.
actually a wonderful edition of Shakespeare that is dated from the 1900s. So it, it was just like a treasure chest,
Yes.
just treasures. It was one of the best moments of my life. It was discovering those books, reading them, and watching the adaptations.
Now, one book I would recommend always is Tolkien, but I would
Mm.
also recommend The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Now, a lot of people go, hey, isn't that a Western? Well, it's called a Civil War Western because it actually takes part in the Civil War, but
Yeah.
it's it's one of the top 10 movies of all time for
Yeah.
characterization, pacing, and plotting. And it shows you how to handle an ensemble cast. Like
Yes. And with
most
Henry
movies,
Fonda in it, and with Henry
yes.
Fonda in it, you can't go. You can't make a mistake with actors like that. You just can't.
Lee Van Cleef, who was a veteran already,
Mhm.
he was not just a gunfighter, he was actually a trained gunfighter and a martial artist. You had
Mm.
Clint Eastwood, who was more classically trained as an actor,
Mhm.
and you also had several men who came up with the ranks as stuntmen. So you had people, and that was shot in Spain, by the way, not in the United States. And
Mm. Okay, I didn't know
the
that. Fun
the
fact.
director spoke Italian and French, and his
Mm.
assistant spoke French and English. So it was director, assistant,
Yeah.
and there were just there were just so many long conversations that I think they fleshed out every scene.
Yeah, well, that was the era of what I think there's a term, and I think it's spaghetti westerns,
That is correct.
where westerns were made um,
Cheap
by
by
a lot of
Italians,
Italian directors.
yes, but not well. The spaghetti western had to be two things: one, Italian;
Hmm.
two, cheap, under $1 million.
Right.
They had to be big productions under $1 million. And though third, originally it had to be shot outside the United States because of the censorship at the time in the United States.
Yeah.
But that censorship in 1965 was self-imposed by the studios to lock out foreign films. But the
Mm.
popularity was growing so much, they had to cave in.
Yeah. Well, that's a wonderful message of hope in that case when
Well,
it
the good,
comes
the bad,
to.
the ugly
Mm.
started the trilogy.
Mm.
The ideas of trilogies. It also gave us character movies because before that it was primarily the plot. The characters didn't matter.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yes, it's a wonderful movie, and I think that even myself as a writer, what I love to write is horror and thrillers, or more specifically, psychological thrillers. But I think that it's very important for a writer or any other creator to don't just stick to your genre. Go go read other genres. Go read other kinds of stories in another environment. Go watch, I don't know, if you've only read classics or only watched classics, go watch, I don't know, an anime, a Japanese anime. If
Oh, excellent.
yeah, if you only watched until now, I would say a bit of commercial movies, go watch a French independent movie. If you've only, you see what I mean?
The Tenenbaums.
Yeah,
The original is it Le Birds? The Birdcage in French,
yes,
the original
yes,
French. Watch that one. It's
yes.
much better
But
than the Americanization.
yeah, I didn't watch the American one because I never really bothered because
No,
I
once you've
saw the,
seen the original,
yeah, I saw the original and there's wonderful music in it. There's also iconic French actors in it. So you know, I really don't think I could watch the American version. I think Robin Williams is in it, so I suppose that he did a good job of it in any case. But still, there was a whole atmosphere in the original French Italian movie, The
you
Birdcage, that you won't have with the American version.
know, no, writing isn't just sitting down. It is
No,
actually a process. What do you
yes.
do to prepare for a new book?
Well, I get inspired very much by music, and I listen to all kinds of music. I'm not at all discriminate in that sense at all, because uh, uh, I still do a lot of classical dancing, so ballet. And when I was a small girl, of course, there was a lot of classical music to listen to, which is a very powerful kind of music, of course. And later on, I discovered the more underground kind of music, like rave, techno, electro, etc. So I did not even begin with the conventional music that an 11 or 12 years old would listen to. It really was underground. And for me, don't come at me, there was a lot of similarities between this kind of music and classical music. One, because of the length of it, the very long pieces of music,
The
and
complexity.
yeah, and they always add on more rhythm and add on the same kind of melody.
Yeah.
And I found it as powerful as classical music. And I love all kinds of music because it helps me
Yeah.
visualize. It helps me
Yes.
come up with dialogue. It helps me um, imagine the environment, the space. Where it's going to be set, and everything. And I'm actually in a complete other world when I listen to music, and just like walk up and down the kitchen or my living room and I listen to music, and I'm extremely concentrated and focused. And the ideas come out with the visualization. They come out raw, and then once I finish listening to music, well, then I can note it down and structure it. And after this, there's also the research. Now, my books are always based on the subjects that I love the most, like psychology, history, and mythology. Now, mythology is linked to history, but it's
Yeah.
more
It's
about,
prehistory.
yeah, it's also about perception, and just discovering other cultures and the beliefs in other cultures,
Yes.
which
Mythology was the basis of early religions. Yes.
absolutely, absolutely. And that's why Becoming Insane, even though it does speak about mental health, it really is much more based on the works of Jung, not the let's say um, how can I say this? Not just how you could heal someone as you can do today. Of course, it talks about therapy and also medication, and also what kind of issues my characters go through. But it really is done through a Jungian lens with all of the symbolism in it. Symbolism is my life when it comes
Yes.
to writing. And I think it's the same for most writers.
Yeah. Writing in itself has motives, and they
Mhm.
and part of the process, I believe, like you said, psychology. That's the for most people, they'll probably not read behavioral analysis because it's rather dry. But if you want to do an in-depth psychological thriller, you have no choice. You have to understand behavioral analysis,
Yes,
particularly.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
There's books, forensics, and there's forensic books and psychology books for writers these days to basically give you the rundown without having to learn a new language.
yes, well, I discovered, psychology since I was like 14, 15 years old, and I was a very like edgy kind of teenager. And I really wanted to discover, a little bit of the dark side of human nature. And I remember what happened with me is that I used to love Gothic stories, Gothic horror stories, and mythology. And I went from that directly into psychology. So, well, I couldn't understand much at the time, but when I studied it again more than 10 years ago, uh, it came through easily. And in any case, you can always ask questions to professionals, whether online or even, wherever. And the first thing I would say, scientific book when it comes to psychology to read is the DMS, or what's it called? Let me check. It's the DMS-5, I think. I'm sorry, my
Your classifications of
DSM-5.
psychological disorders. Yeah,
Yeah, DSM-5, exactly, the DSM-5. You start
yeah.
with that, and
Used
well,
in England and the United States. Every other country has their own forms
yeah,
they
well,
handle.
we must remember that we're in the domain of medicine, so um, there will always be a new version of the DSM that will come out after a
Yeah.
couple of years, because of course,
Well,
not only therapists and doctors, but also professors in psychology will add on a new understanding about a mental disorder, and it will help to have a better understanding, and maybe some mental health um,
with
name.
yes,
Some disorders will be renamed and will be linked, with this kind of disorder rather than this one. This one creates this one, etc., etc.
yeah, the complex dynamic between the paraphilias and psychotic behavior, for instance, where if they stabilize the paraphilia and it no longer controls the patient's life, they no longer deem um, they go from the incurable to the manageable, where
Yeah.
in the past, up until about, I think, 1980, a lot of paraphilias were deemed incurable. While they may be incurable, they can now be what they call stabilized. That is, they
Yes.
don't dominate your life.
Yeah.
You can enjoy it in the
Absolutely.
privacy of your own home without disturbing other people or becoming schizophrenic, psychotic, or neurotic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, of course, this is very scientific, and as I said, in Becoming Insane, you do have the scientific point of view, but you also have the imaginative point of view, in the sense that what my characters suffer from, Jack Vane and John Crane, which are basically their fears, is all symbolized through their dreams, which are very fairy tale like. So there was also, for Becoming Insane, apart from the scientific and the psychology, I studied also fairy tales and their symbolism.
Yeah, because if you break down a fairy tale, yes, the very like Cinderella
Yeah,
is the schizophrenic dream of a girl trapped in a basement, and she's watching a parade, and she goes off into this dream. But yeah, people don't understand that a lot of our fairy tales were tragedies.
yes, and they
And
were very gory too. I think
yes,
that the best movie that really was able to capture the essence of the atmosphere of a fairy tale was Ridley Scott's 1981 movie Legend.
I briefly remember that, but I just
There
can't think
was
of the
Tim,
plot right now.
there was Tim Curry in it. He was the big devil guy.
Yes.
There was also a British movie. Let me check it. There was also a British movie which was a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. I think, what was it?
Yeah.
The
I
Company
think
of Wolves.
the Company of Wolves. I think the Little Red Riding Hood originally started. I think that one started in Italy. I know Cinderella was actually a Russian story translated into Italian
Mm-hmm.
and then made
Yes,
its way to the West through. But the vast majority of them are Nordic, mostly Denmark.
yes. Now I did. I don't know if I read it somewhere or if I watched it somewhere that there is a Cinderella-like story in China
Yes,
also
they have
that
their own.
came before
Yes,
the European one, which may have originated from there. And there's also an Egyptian Cinderella-like fairy
yeah.
tale.
We're not sure about the Russian origin because it has no date, and the document doesn't
Mm,
exist anymore, so it can't be dated. So we have
no.
no idea when the original was translated from Russian to Italian, other
Well,
than
it's
it was done in the 1400s.
yeah, well, it's very difficult because a lot of those tales were told by word of mouth.
Yes,
They uh, so you have one version of it there, another version of it here. Um,
yeah,
it's quite difficult, and I think that's why was it the Grimm brothers that went on this crusade to interview people who knew those stories that were never written down, and then they would, run them down for them.
because they have been retold in many ways.
Mm,
Some fairy tales, as you know, were anglicized. Some
hmm.
were some were turned from tragedies to comedies, like Cinderella. You know, a happy ending.
Yes,
As you know, probably studying mythology, that a lot of mythology is actually prehistory. That it was the same. It was passed word of mouth, and a lot of fairy tales were actual. What would you say? Abridged versions of history.
yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that now, of course, when you look at it through a psychological lens, the Little Red Riding Hood is, of course, about be careful. It's about stranger danger, basically.
Yes, yes,
But there were real cases of cannibalism.
yes. It's
Still,
about the child disappearances that were
yes,
occurring in the Black Forest,
yes,
and
absolutely. And there were
and
still cases of cannibalism because of the poverty. So, and that existed. It existed, I mean, in Russia just after the Second World War,
yeah,
in
they
the
in Russia.
USSR.
Yes, in Russia, they
So,
hired 100,000 ex-soldiers to hunt the wolves, and
yeah.
people were going, but there aren't that many wolves. But we know who they were really hunting. We know
Yeah.
now yes, we know now who they were really hunting. And it's the same in the Black Forest. You know, the
Mm,
tale of the Dark Knight.
mm,
Yeah, they called him he was considered by some the bad guy, but he would ride out in the forest, find the woodcutter, and
yeah.
do the deed. He was basically go out and murder the murderers. You know, bring. We don't want to bring these people to trial. We don't want to highlight them because a lot of them may have actually been the son of the illegitimate children of nobles who were cast out, and
Oh, okay. Yeah.
so because the Black Forest was a common dumping ground for unwanted.
Mm,
Same
yeah.
with Sherwood. The tale of Sherwood Forest is and Robin Hood and his merry men. They were the survivors of children being dumped during or abandoned
Mm,
during the Black Plague.
yes. I'll have to. I'm noting it down because this is interesting.
Yeah,
And
you,
yeah.
history of the plague, history of witchcraft and cannibalism. Those two, I don't think they're in print anymore. When I was in Europe, I came across. Um, Actually, I was told by a French Russian historian about the hunting of the wolves, and he said
Mhm,
you'll never find it in books. The Russian government will never admit it, but he said he was one of the soldiers, and at the end, and they were basically told not to come back because they didn't want, go to the west. Don't look back. Find these men. Go from Moscow to Berlin. You find them,
mhm,
and just once you're out of ammunition, leave your leave your kit, walk across the border, and don't look back because
mhm.
Stalin didn't. In some ways, it was weird because usually Stalin would have done a purge, but those a lot of them were actually released,
Okay, that's
and
interesting. Well,
yeah,
considering that I did a bit of a deep dive into Stalin's mind
yeah.
quite recently, actually, for book two of the Look Inside of You series. Yes, that's quite astonishing that he just didn't kill them right there.
Which he did with a lot of other groups.
Yeah, yeah,
Although
that's
he didn't execute the heads, he did execute the heads of the SVD, but he kept a lot of men, kept about half of them in place.
yeah.
So, which is
Well,
weird as well.
well,
Not everything
consider.
he did, but again, you're dealing with emotions and psychology, not logic.
Well, considering who Stalin was, he probably did that because of a question of logistics rather than empathy or
Yes.
pity.
No, logistics. Well, these men we can't replace.
Yeah.
And yeah, or they haven't shown any. But don't forget, a lot of Stalin's paranoia turns out to be true. there, there were people trying to kill him. The West did plot with him to create World War II. There is just, the psychology of Stalin is a man who went mad because of the truth, not because of delusions.
Yes, but it's a vicious circle because if
Yes,
you are a tyrant,
you
people
are on
won't
the
like
quick
you, of
path,
course. So then you become paranoid and you become even more tyrannical, and then even more people want to get rid of you, and then you're even more paranoid.
especially when you engage in conspiracies since your youth to disrupt governments, to commit assassinations, murders, robberies. So you built up a bit of a reputation that,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he just makes such a fascinating bad guy.
Yes, well, he does have a bit of a, he's become a bit of the stereotypical image of the
Unfortunately, because
tyrant, physically also, physically speaking also. It's, yeah, it's,
you can't call him the Mad Russian because he's a Georgian.
yeah, not even, we can't. It's yeah, I did a bit of a study on him for book two of the Look Inside You series that I finished writing, and well, I won't talk about book two. I actually have to talk about book one first.
Yes, yes. But before we talk about book one, tell us who's your favorite writer, or do you have just a
Oh,
particular book?
oh, I have many books and many writers. Well, the first I would say typical horror that is really in the genre of horror that I liked was a Stephen King one, and that was Carrie, the
Yeah,
first
I've
one.
read that one.
Yeah, this
One of the
one
few I've read.
really, yeah, short and sweet, but very good. Tennessee Williams' Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, I really liked it. There were a lot of parts, quite horrible parts, horrible in the sense that were dramatic, that were put into the movie with Liz Taylor and the rest. And
Gosh, she was such a good
one,
character actress.
yeah, absolutely. And another Tennessee Williams that I could qualify as a horror would be Suddenly Last Summer. That is really horrific. Yeah. Uh, well, when I was a teenager, I was a lot into fantasy, and then I went into Eastern European writers, of course. I started with Kundera, The Abominable Likeness of Being, which was my favorite at the time. Then there was Dostoevsky and Kafka. I really liked Kafka and Bulgakov. And then, well, I usually don't read any kind of fiction work when I write. I only read biographies and historical books and mythology.
Or
And
reference. Or
yeah,
reference.
and also true crime sometimes. But
Yeah.
that's it. When I write, I do stay away from fiction books. Or
In-
I come back to the classics.
Now, you mentioned music is your inspiration. Are there any other areas where you draw inspiration from? You've mentioned a few.
Well, there's animation, of course, because you can do a lot of things with things with animation that you can't do with real live people. Um, it's not one thing or one thing at a time. It's a moment which has this and this and that that creates something. It's an accumulation of several elements that then ticks.
Yes, I understand. Uh, you have a character, you have an incident, you have a reaction, and now you have what's called the chain events,
Yeah.
and then you have the conclusion. There, that's the elements. That's the most basic elements of a story. A lot of people uh, pad their writing with descriptions. Others will go into their characters, their motivations. Sometimes, you know, it's good to have that diversity. You look, particularly with anime, it is just so diverse. You,
Hmm.
it's not just superheroes. It's not just magic. It's not just fantasy. You have some of the longest running series are family dramas or comedies.
Yes, and thrillers too. You have everything,
You have
and
yeah, and there is huge psychological thrillers like Monster. If you haven't
yeah.
heard of it, you would like it. I
Oh, I
think.
I love it. I know it. It used to be on the French TV channels in 2004.
Yeah,
Um,
it was actually the French helped fund that. It was one of the few they've put their
yeah,
finger into and got
yeah,
produced.
because the French were the first. France was the first country to put anime on their television, on the channels for kids, and anime took a long time to be taken seriously, in a sense, I
Yeah,
think.
and unfortunately some countries like Russia have taken a huge step backwards by banning a bunch of animes, but they're
Ugh.
not the only ones. Europe is looking at banning a bunch. Um, I understand they believe the imagery creates psychological disorders, but no, they don't understand that imagery soothes psychological disorders and makes them
Yes, the
manageable.
colors, etc. Now, I do, being a woman, I can feel sometimes a little bit uncomfortable when there's an anime character who looks much too young to be doing stuff, too infantile.
Yeah,
Um,
I understand.
I'm a kid of the 90s, and the anime of the time was still they would still draw very mature people. Even I mean, even Sailor Moon looks more mature than her
She's
age.
six. She's 16,
Yeah,
but she ages as the anime progresses, whereas a lot of anime they don't age.
yeah,
Um, but I understand they are actually including those characters because they know their audience and they know those characters sell. And I know the discomfort is actually a feature of the advertising. Just enough
mm,
discomfort to create a buzz, not enough discomfort to get them banned.
yes, yeah, yeah.
It's
It's
controversy is
marketing.
psychological exploitation of controversy is very big in Hollywood right now, particularly in video games, to
Yeah.
exploit outrage. Um, Actually, that's outrage is what propelled Stephen King. Without outrage, nobody would have heard
Oh yeah,
of
absolutely. Well,
Stephen King.
I always thought that a good writer, a good artist, director, or whatever will be able to put
People
the
used to
finger
think
where
that
it
too. I
hurts.
used to think that too, but unfortunately, no. It's the loudest voice that gets the most attention and
Yeah.
draws a crowd. Yeah, it's controversy, um, and you know, there's just so many techniques that if you've got the money, you can buy success with psychological manipulation rather than actual talent. And you can actually have
Maybe,
the audience believing you're talented.
yeah, maybe, but at the end of the day, with the internet, there are so many people that review movies and books. I
Yeah,
uh, I don't think that true lovers of books and movies and fiction in general would just fall for any movie, any commercial movie. No, no, I don't think
no,
so.
uh, but I do think about once every decade, enough people do. About once every decade.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh,
Maybe, yeah.
just look at the psychology of the marketing of Harry Potter, and you'll understand. Or now, Stephen King did do the controversy on purpose. He didn't intend to be controversial when he created. Now, I forget the name of the movie. Um, it features the girl who's is abused by a mother because is starting her period, and I forget the name of it.
Yes, Carrie.
It was Carrie.
Yeah.
Was Carrie? Why did I forget the name? I don't. I'm getting old. And a, no, believe it or not, I'm over 50.
Um, I'm 33.
Oh, I was
Yeah.
going to say 23.
No.
Now, what advice would you give to a new writer?
You really need to have a passion, love what you do. Well, that's very cliche and typical, but I would say also don't just be in front of your blank page and start to write. Take your time to develop your story in your mind and through notes by first of all getting inspiration wherever you think is necessary, music or movies or whatever, and do your research. Because no matter what you're writing, even if you're writing epic fantasy, a story that is set in a fantasy world, it doesn't matter. If you do have at least some good realistic elements in it, it has weight. And also try to be original. I mean, don't. I know that following trends and fashions make you earn money, and that no, don't worry about that because there's always a reader or a viewer for everything. See what I mean? There will always be. So I think that the best way to be original, knowing that you can't be 100% original all the time, it can't be, is to change your perception of what horror is, of what thrillers are. Uh, you can change your perceptions and your own concepts, let's say, and beliefs by studying and learning from other cultures and other countries. And for example, making comparisons. For example, I'm half British and half Moroccan. So, for example, my grandmother would read to me uh, English, Irish, and let's say Scottish fairy tales, and my dad would read to me Moroccan or Arabic tales like the 1001 Nights, and that's very good because it helps the child or even the adult to pinpoint the differences in the storytelling and the characters, etc., but also what is similar, the similarities. Not to mention that what can be considered scary or evil here is not somewhere else. So the object of horror in a horror story is completely different.
I could give you a good example historically. Vlad the
Mhm.
Impaler.
Yeah,
To the
yeah,
people of Romania, he is still a hero,
yeah,
especially I think it's changed their name again. I forget the name of it, but there's a town that he liberated from the Turks.
yes,
It's and
um,
they celebrate Vlad the Impaler.
yes, every year.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yes,
and
yes,
so therefore change your perspective. Now I mentioned earlier Stalin. Again, change your perspective. He was not a man driven mad by paranoia. He was driven insane by the truths and the
mm,
weight of his actions to deal with those truths.
yes, probably. But you see, truth can be used to hurt people. You don't need to
Uh,
lie to people to hurt them. Just tell them the truth.
yeah, there's a little known fact about the monster of the 1930s is that that was his favorite method of intimidation and destruction of society was to
Mm,
was to use the truth against people and then introduce broad generalizations. But
yeah.
yes, start with the truth. That
Yes, it's always
often,
like that. It's always like that with the master manipulators.
yes,
If we
they
can
start
really
with the
call
truth.
them, yeah, they start with the truth or a
A
truth that,
fraction of it.
yeah, a, let's say a truth that a certain number of people believe in, and then once you follow the person, that's it.
Yeah.
They'll just
Once
feed you anything, and
once you fool them into believing they can gain advantage by changing their mind.
mm,
See, that's the thing with manipulation. You have to tell them they gain advantage. Not only can you buy this glorious revolution, my friends, but you'll be in the land of milk and honey forever and never have to work a day in your life again. Now, of
yeah,
course,
it's glamour. It's always
it,
about the glamour.
yes,
It's
and
glamorizing something when in actuality, it's always this image of if you follow me, you will not suffer anymore, you will not feel pain anymore.
the
That
Pied
does not
Piper.
exist because pain is like death. It's a guarantee, not an abstract concept.
No, which is actually whether you look at Stalin, the little mustache man, Pol Pot, many others, they all pale in comparison to the Pied Piper who got millions to follow him to their deaths.
Mm, yeah,
It was and they called him the Pied Piper. It was actually originally called the False Pope. He pretended to be the Pope. He probably wasn't even a priest. but he convinced millions of people, young and old, to march to the Middle East to take on the, I believe it was Saladin's invasion of
Yes,
Jerusalem, the second
yes,
invasion of Jerusalem, which already was 10 years earlier. Like by the time they heard of it in Rome, it had already happened 10 years earlier
yeah.
because, but it
Well,
didn't matter to them. The
well,
masses,
religion has, yes, well, religion has always been the shield of glamour behind death and
the catalyst
torture.
of wars, the
Yeah.
shield, yeah, like you said, the shield from criticism, the originator of politics. All politics derives from religion. All religion derives from mythology. All mythology derives from history.
Well, personally, I think that it would be important to go back uh, um, into more ancient times and study mythology before even studying religious stories. Now, I
Yeah,
don't have anything against religion per se, because, of course, I mean, uh,
there are some. A moral code is still a moral code if it's a
yes,
moral code.
yes, absolutely. However, I do have a little bit of a like I'm always a little bit triggered when children and religion are brought together. Because for me, if you really want to study a religion, it's important that you're quite mature and that you understand allegory and metaphor
Which
before.
I believe, and a lot of people believe, and unfortunately, the Court of Human Rights, I believe, and the American court struck it down that, well, religious, political, and sexual, uh, for better want of a better word, instruction, which are more shouldn't be done to children. Right, the,
Yeah.
that was the original behind the argument to take religion out of schools. It didn't work, so they made it an emotional argument, right? That you're abusing other religions by indoctrinating their children into yours. Whereas in fact, religious studies always have been voluntarily. It's just it just became so emotionally charged. And again, it comes back to politics derives from religion, religion derives from mythology, and it goes back to history. And unfortunately, a lot of people they carry secretly their history on their back and believe that is a justification for their angst.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, personally, when it comes to this, I consider myself very lucky because I
Yes.
come from a multiple ethnic background. I could just choose, compare. So, for example, my father is Muslim. My mom is more of a Buddhist. My British grandmother was Protestant. There was such a mix. And of course, you can feel a little bit lost, because so many choices. You don't know what suits you the best. So at the end of the day, I'm the kind of person who is nothing suits me. I just take the best of many worlds, and that's it.
The solution to the paradox, the paralysis of choice. When
Mm,
confronted with too many choices, most people choose paralysis. Uh, but of course, the best option, which is how we derived, going from how politics derived from religion, and how religion derived from mythology, and how mythology derived from history, was the fact that people were taking the best, or like you said, the best allegories, the best lessons, the easiest to learn, the most fresh in most people's minds, and turned them into mythology.
mhm, mhm.
Uh,
Absolutely. And I think that when you do love your religion and your spirituality, it's always important to learn its historical facts, no matter the stories.
Unfortunately, we're also dealing with a problem where you can't confront people have a psychological disorder, and I forget it. It's actually a multi-layered psychological disorder where one, because you're indoctrinated as a child, you form a moral your id your moral your
Mm,
id
mm,
forms a process of comparisons.
mhm,
Um, So every question you ask yourself whether it's conscious or subconscious, is going to be based on that that indoctrination.
mm,
So when confronted with facts that can't go contrary to your id,
mm,
unfortunately, the default for most children is violence, and therefore, as adults, most default is violence.
mhm. Yes, absolutely. It, it,
Whereas
it,
your id obviously was fed multiple inputs constantly, therefore didn't form a reactionary decision making process.
well, I don't know. I mean, I was quite a bit of a delinquent
No,
when I was a
you're more
teenager.
uh, yeah, but you're an observer. If you weren't an
Yes,
observer, you couldn't be a writer. But
yes.
reactionaries become politicians.
Yeah, but I think that's it. I mean, it's important to also be sociable with people that are different from you.
Yeah,
That's extremely
socializing
important
exactly.
to get other point of views. I mean, it's I'm someone who has to be intellectually stimulated a lot. Otherwise, I'm bored. And one of the best ways to do that is just to learn something new every day. And this something new will always come from different sources,
Yes,
legitimate sources, but different sources.
yes. I've met fascinating professors over the years, English, French historians.
Mm,
I've I've been a couple of times to different parts of Vietnam to on and spent a bit of time there, different museums. Um, so I've really collected a lot of observations and see the similarities that I think a lot of people miss, and that is our psychological disorders are a failure to deal with stress. Now, a lot of people, when they write, of course, as the more you write, you reach the limits of your mind. I'm sure you probably got to the point where you've reached your limit. You just put the book down. You know, a
mhm.
lot of people can't do that. They're linear thinkers, so they always think more. You know, oh, I've just has to push through it. You know, more is better. And how do you deal with stress?
Uh, I'm someone who is a little bit obsessive when it comes to my schedule. I plan ahead. Okay, I'll do this tomorrow, like that, I can do that the next day. Well, there's stress and there's another kind of stress. The
Yeah, there are
stress,
two kinds of stress.
yeah, I mean, the stress of, I mean, stressing out about, uh, for example, will I have enough time tomorrow to, I don't know, write this and then, I don't know, send out emails and then form this person is not at all the same stress compared to, for example, the stress someone can have when they have a burnout or panic attacks and extreme anxiety like I used to have when I was 23. Because this is not stress, it's terror and fear.
Yeah, well, yeah,
So, if you're asking me how I dealt with this, well, I went to seek therapy. I took medicine, and apart from therapy and medicine, it's always important to have a goal and to know who you are. You don't need to be confident because no one can be confident about themselves every day of their life. You just need to know yourself and know what you like and what you don't like and have a goal. And me, it really was writing, and writing was the way to. It's called sublimation. You put everything into it, and then the you don't feel the pain anymore. You don't feel the fear anymore because it's been expressed not just by you to your therapist, but through your characters, through your story.
As yeah, s- uh, coping is about stress is a signal to let go. As far as
Mm.
you have to let go.
Yeah,
It's a
well,
natural signal.
yes, well,
It's your mind.
yeah, it's a long process to learn how to say, okay, no, not today, because this will just add on too much.
Yes, and people also on the other end have to stop applying pressure.
Yes or no, because,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
how can I say this? Because even when I'm like, okay, no, not today,
yeah.
I still end up, for example, I don't know, reading something or watching a documentary or maybe just a video that just explains the first layer of a subject that I like. Uh, in any case, I'll do that. And even if
Well,
it's
that pretty
considered as
much, yeah,
studying, I love to do it. So it's relaxing to me.
yeah, that pretty much answers all the questions I have. So, you want to tell us a little bit more about your book before we go?
Well, it has had
Time to hold it up.
some it has had it has had some very good reviews. I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of my characters, Jack Vane and John Crane. And for anyone who is interested in a psychological thriller that has this, I would say, very fairy tale like kind of atmosphere in which the horror of the story is not the monster in itself or the creature in itself, but what kind of relationship the characters have with this creature or this monster or villain. Well, you can just pick up my book because ultimately the horror of becoming insane is the fear of being devoured. It's not the fear of death. Death is something else. Death is separation. It's the fear of annihilation. When you're an adult, you fear annihilation. And so, of course, when you're a child, it's the same, but it's expressed in a different way. It's the fear of being eaten by a monster, it's the fear of being devoured. So, in the sense, it's the fear of non existence because you're not only going to die, you're going to be chewed up, swallowed, and digested. So, it's about infantile fears and how they come back with a revenge in your adult life.
Amazing. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming.
And
Thank
well,
you for
thank you
coming.
so much to you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you.
so welcome. Yes. It's amazing conversation. And everybody, thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe to support the channel, or check out my links in the description below. But of course, Layla's book is in the description below. And of course, this will be soon on X. And I will tweet out the links in that as well. Thank you, everybody, and see you.